All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and such a pleasure to be here on Adobe Live with our Friday Masterclass. How is everyone doing today? So today, by popular demand, I've been getting a lot of requests lately about, since people are suddenly creating a lot more, right? You're shooting a lot more footage, you're doing more photography, you're illustrating more, you're doing all these things more, trying to get inspired to do more. A lot of people have been asking about how do I kind of take my, homegrown self-shot video and just make it look more pro, more cinematic. And what does that even mean? Well, I don't exactly know how to define that, but I get the idea that people are asking, right? You just want it to look a little bit more, it's got to have that something so that it doesn't look like you just picked up your camera and shot it. Now, the thing is, depending upon how you shot it, all cameras have a different look. In fact, if you look at most of your sort of popular YouTubers, many of them have a very specific kind of look to their videos, and largely because that's a good portion of them are shooting with like the Sony cameras, the Lumix cameras, and those particular cameras, specifically with their sort of the color science built in, have a very distinct look. Now, if you go back a few years ago when Canon and the 5D and 7D were kind of at the beginning of the DSLR boom, that footage, too, at that time has a very kind of specific look. And then when we cut to today, where we're using, our mobile devices like the iPhone 11 or the Samsung S10 to shoot amazing 4K, those devices, too, have a specific look. But they don't necessarily look like movies, right? They don't necessarily look like film. They don't necessarily look like just that one step above that makes you as the creator feel like, yes, I've achieved the look or sound that I want. So that's what we're going to cover today. As always, we've got our live interactive chat. So unlike my regular daily streams, I'll be following this live in real time. So great to see you, Zitrig TV, Anjali, hello, David Newman, Juan Obregon, Andreas, Michelle, Steve Festus, Kosoboom, great to see you. Tim, of course, as always, Jack Watson, Alexandra Biquet, really nice to see everybody. So now, before we get started, I wanted to point out, now a lot of you have been asking over the last couple of weeks if we may at some point have a video DCC, Daily Creative Challenge. Well, I'm happy to tell you that it will be coming soon. We've worked out how we're going to do it. I can't give you an ETA just yet, but we are in fact working on this. So thank you for being so vocal, and thanks for inspiring me too to want to create the content to distribute to allow you all to kind of experiment with video. And it's for everybody. It's not for pros. It's just for anybody. I shouldn't say it's not for pros. It's for anybody. That's what I'm trying to say. And what's up? We got a lot of people chatting on YouTube too. Of course, you want to follow the conversation on behance.net/Adobe Live. That's where I'm actually reading most of the chats there. But for the moment, Mohammadi, Akash, Matus, Jose, Salient Film, great to see you all. Shweta Singh and Isai Taylor, thank you so much for watching. Okay, but as I was mentioning, so in lieu of us having our Daily Creative Challenge at the moment, many of you in the video community will be familiar with Ryan Connolly from Film Riot, my good friend over there. Well, they're putting on a little bit of a challenge, again, kind of inspired by everything that's going on in the world today. So if you want to check that out, I'm putting the URL in the chat for you. Again, this is available to anybody, and it's based around you submitting kind of footage that you've created yourself. And in this tutorial, I want you to watch this, learn a couple new things. Some of these things you've seen before. I pulled out a couple new ones that I haven't shown yet here in the master classes, but check out the Film Riot challenge that they're doing over there. Something else to keep you inspired over the weekend. And again, stay tuned for more news on the upcoming video daily challenges as well. All right, so let's go ahead and cut over to my screen. I'm going to move over here to Premiere, and we will get started. Get rid of my lower third, and okay. All right, so the first step in kind of just, up-leveling and improving the look of, say, iPhone video or even mirrorless video. Doesn't really matter. And a lot of this, of course, depends how you're shooting it, right? Excuse me. Got a lot of burping going on. I don't just mean, if you're holding it portrait or landscape, but, what app you're using to shoot it in and what kind of things you can do to the image that you're capturing. If you're really wanting to get the most out of, all the color tools in Premiere Pro, you typically want to shoot everything kind of flat. This is not unlike, if we've discussed in previous master classes, shooting raw, and then leveraging camera raw, which is all just metadata, right? To really take advantage of all of the color latitude that you have. Well, iPhone isn't shooting raw video. It's still what we consider 8-bit 420. But if you have ways to like drop contrast, drop saturation, and drop the sharpness a bit, you're going to have more room to work with when you get inside of Lumetri. Most of your cameras are applying kind of just a profile directly, so everything is kind of saturated, it's kind of contrasty, which is good, it looks good, but this again can also just make it look not quite right. So we're going to go through a couple of things that you can do in Lumetri across a bunch of different clips here. We're going to talk a little bit about stabilization. We're going to talk about lens correction, which is something I haven't shown here before. So yes, we all know this, and Terry was talking about this, I believe, earlier this week, and of course last week, right? We always do this with our images. In fact, Lightroom and Lightroom CC will apply lens profile corrections on import. Well, you can do the same thing in Premiere Pro, which is particularly useful if you're shooting with wide angle or drone footage. I have both examples of those. I'm going to show you those. And then to close it off, we're going to do a little sound work. So again, just a couple of quick techniques that you can use to maybe minimize echo or reverb, or add echo, reverb, massive delays and decays, and really kind of, create that cinematic type sound that you'll often find in your videos. All right. Did I say Lumetri, June Parlett Norsworthy? I did, but it's Lumetri, Lumetri. But I like your spelling better. Actually, your spelling actually says Lumetri. So Akash came from YouTube. Very nice. All right. Saludine Cook, nice to see you. Lauren Robert Kandata, great. Via Lucia from Germany, hello. Michelle, will there be a Discord channel? Yes! Yes! Gus has already taken care of getting that set up. So you might want to ping Gus on the Photoshop Discord. He can connect you there. Yes, I want to start moving people over to the Premiere Discord. I will be in there regularly starting Monday to start feeding questions about video and any kind of stuff you're working on. So yes, we've got the Premiere Pro Discord coming. So exciting. Derej Biranu, great to see you. Hugh O'Connor, yes, all right. Cool. Oh, lots of hellos and yeses. That's awesome. Okay. And hello, Theodore E. from London. Cool. All right. Lumetri. Tim, you are never short of puns and jokes. Okay. So here we have some footage shot in my front yard, in my cul-de-sac here in the desert of a beautiful rainbow after a very scary monsoon. So if we just kind of take a look at this footage, again, now you're also not seeing it full size, which is why you're seeing some of that moraying down here. This will not be as obvious if we were to go full screen on this. And it looks okay. But one of the things that, tends to just irk me about shooting content with the iPhone, or just really a lot of mobile devices in general, is that, they tend to be overly sharp. You see this a lot with the GoPros as well, and a lot of sports footage, which is sometimes really nice, but it's edgy. And I don't mean edgy like edgy cool. It's edgy like it just has some harsh edge that just feels overly digital. And, for me, I prefer a slightly softer film-like look. That's my preference. Now, everybody has a different preference, and every type of content will, require a different particular look, right? So, but for this, it's just like the trees and the branches, they're so defined. And, this is desert landscape. So it's a lot of like small, thin twigs and lines. It just feels kind of edgy. It doesn't feel like that warmth that I want from the rainbow. So to do this, to tackle this, to take some of that edge off, we're going to use a couple of different modules in Lumetri Color. Now, as always, you can, if you're not in this workspace, you can go up to the window menu here, workspace, and go into color. And this will pull up the Lumetri panel. You can also just pull up Lumetri Color directly from the window menu there. Okay, sweet. All right. And hello, Jorge from Nicaragua. So in the basic corrections section, as I've described many, many times before, this is the Lightroom Develop module. Okay, it's all the same controls that you have in that particular piece of the module, or at least most of them. Temperature, tint, white balance selector, exposure, contrast, highlight, shadow, white, black, and saturation. Okay, so first and foremost, and if you want, and we're not going to go into scopes in this one, but if you want kind of a little bit more detail as to what's going on in your shot, obviously we've got a couple sections here in the top where the clouds, and I just shot this with the native iPhone app, not inside of Rush for this particular one. Highlights are a little blown out, so we might be able to kind of recover a little bit of that. And as I'm looking at my scopes, I mean, we've still got some stuff that's just totally blown out. Maybe I can affect a little bit of that by dropping the white level as well. So we'll see there. And yeah, we're pulling that down, just bringing it back to within a legal range. And already it has kind of a softer, although maybe even a slightly darker in terms of mood kind of look. But we're starting to see the elements of that rainbow kind of push forward a little bit. Again, we can adjust exposure and things here. Additionally, we can also adjust temperature. I think the temperature is actually quite right. This is exactly how it looked. Again, you've got some different options here. You could take your white balance right here, but I want to point out that all of these things that you know real well, again, if we wanted to drop the contrast, again, give it a slightly more softer film-like aesthetic, you can use that here. And what you're going to find is the contrast control in particular, it's very, very effective and very film-like in the way that it affects your footage. And again, you can see we've got kind of not a lot of shadow detail. We're kind of going into straight black. We're kind of hitting the edge of our scopes at the bottom here. So just by dropping that contrast ever so slightly, we're just going to lift those shadows. We could also lift the shadows here, but on this particular footage, this is just going to make it probably a little bit noisy in the foreground there. So I'm not going to touch the shadows all too much, all right? Just going to drop the contrast a little bit here, and I'll just lessen it even more, okay? Just to kind of even it out. Not a huge amount of change. So again, we can go up to our effects bypass up here. Before, it's kind of bright, kind of just saturated in a weird way and crispy. After, okay, it's just a little dimmer. It's a little more flat. Not totally flat, but we're getting somewhere, okay? So now at this point, again, we can continue to do all kinds of things in the basic correction tab here. But I wanted to focus on using film stock LUTs to really take the edge off of like iPhone mobile footage. Again, even if you're shooting mirrorless, but it's super ultra sharp focus. Sometimes it just looks a little bit harsh. So you'll notice if you go into the looks menu here, we have a whole series, these first 10 or 12 or so presets, okay, also known as display LUTs, that actually emulate film stock capture and print. So that's why you'll see, if you see this like Fuji Eterna 250D Kodak 2395, that means it's emulating shot on Fuji Eterna stock printed on Kodak stock, okay? These are amazing. Now, these are not for all occasions, and you may not like the particular way that they look. What's cool about this is that we can use these little arrows that you see in the preview here to kind of scrub through them before we apply them. So here's CineSpace. This one always tends to be very, very intense. This is why you'd probably want to back off on the intensity. CineSpace only really works if you've got super flat footage to begin with. If you've got footage that's already crunchy and very, very saturated, it's going to be pretty difficult to leverage this one effectively. But again, maybe you want that super crunched, this kind of almost has like a Transformer-y type look. Transformer the film, I mean. All right, but now we'll get into some of the film stock LUTs. And you can see this one here kind of gives it a slightly more magenta hue. This one, a bit more natural. It kind of opens up the highlights and a bit of the brightness here. This is the one we were just saying, 250D, 2395. Happen to like that one a lot. All right. Again, a little bit more contrast, a little bit lower contrast, F125. All right. This is 500D. Ooh, this one has a bit more of that daylight blue, blue-green. This one feels very old school. This almost feels like 8mm film here. And then this one, 5218, that seems to be pretty close to the actual color and look that we're going for. So I just single click on this, it automatically applies it. And right away, you're gonna see that it just takes a little bit more of that edge off, right? So here's the before the LUT, kind of dark, a bit dingy. After, a little softer, there's now a little more color detail. There's also more shadow detail. And look, even if you don't know how to read these scopes, very simply, if you're seeing on your scopes that you're going beyond this 0 line here, that means that you've lost all shadow detail, right? So look at how much we were able to lift the shadows just by applying this LUT. Here's the before, and look, we're pinning 0 IRE right here. Okay, so that means there's a couple sections here where the black is just, there's no detail whatsoever. It's just gone, right? turn that LUT back on, and look at that. It just lifted those shadows up, and it also softened some of those highlights. So let's go back to the start. Original, okay, blown out highlights, crushed black, missing some shadow detail, right? Crunchy. Let's bring everything back in. After, softer, a little more film-like, more balanced. Now we've also kind of, we're not quite, I don't know that I'd say we're in legal color range. We're still a little bit hot, although we're not hitting the top of, we're not hitting 100 here. But it's a lot better, right? And it just has a slightly different look. Now you'll also notice you have a couple additional things in here which will look familiar to you from Lightroom. Sharpen, vibrance, and additional saturation on the LUT itself. You also have LUT intensity, right? So if we wanted to increase that film stock, I wouldn't say it's an overlay, but the amount that we're applying to the original footage, you can see that here. But as we increase that, it's getting to be a bit too much. We can also decrease it, right? So maybe it's just very subtle. And it's really interesting to look at the scopes to see how it's affecting shadows and highlights as well as the midtone content. So I think we're just going to leave this at the default right at 100%. I think that's good. And then you've got additional controls here to adjust shadow tint and highlight tint. Color-wise, white balance-wise, I think this looks really good. All right. Saladin Cook, oh, you're in Phoenix as well. You shoot with the Blackmagic 4K. I know a movie studio location, know a lot of filmmakers. Very nice. Moses Pardeas, this is all new to me, really want to learn. Awesome, you are in the right place. And Tunk Budek, yes, before and after. So again, this little toggle bypass, this will toggle all of the modules in Lumetri. You also have individual on-off controls for each of the tabs inside of Lumetri, all right? So we're gonna do one more thing to this, all right? One more thing to up-level this. We didn't really do a lot, right? We applied basically a preset. We did a little basic correction, right? To just minimize some of the highlight blowouts. Brought back a little shadow detail via lowering the contrast. But there's a couple more things I want to do. Now, this may seem a little bit daunting, but it isn't. And I'm just going to focus on two modules here inside curves. And they are the RGB curves, which all of you will know from Photoshop, from everywhere, right? Same curves, same concept, same control, works exactly the way you expect it to. But the one that you might not be familiar with is this, what we call selective color, which is hue versus sat. And what this allows you to do is, as the name suggests, you can adjust, boost or cut, the saturation of a selected hue. So one of the things that I wanted to do here was really bring out the red of the rainbow, right? Just to kind of accentuate a bit more of that rainbow color, and red being kind of that fundamental primary color. And we just wanted to pop through. So here's how this works. And then similarly, I also want to bring out more of the blue sky. The blue sky was really, really lovely that day. And that's just gonna, again, it's adding a different level of saturation, but very targeted saturation to targeted color ranges. So let's go ahead and take the eyedropper here, and I'm simply going to select the red of the rainbow. And when I do that, what you'll see is that it automatically gives us 3 control points along our color hue line down here. And by the way, we have this cool slider in here which allows you to bring those control points right into view, okay? And then if I hold down my shift key, this is going to constrain lateral movement. So I'm just going to raise where the center point is. Now this looks like it selected a bit more of the orange there, but let's just go ahead and raise that. And what you see is, and I love the UI of this, it's showing you that as you raise this control point, we're saturating those orange hues, right? But look at the line, you can see that it starts to go white as we go below. So again, if we do this, now it's desaturating just the orange hues, leaving everything else, okay? Now, just by looking at this, again, you can see we're affecting the wall there because we're selecting a bit too much of that orange. So I'm going to move these control points. I'm going to go slightly more red over here and move this center point more into the reds. And what you'll see dynamically is that we're now affecting less of that orange, and more of the red, okay? You can even move this one over just a little bit more, like that, and slide this over just a little. Again, just to kind of minimize. I don't really want to bring up too much of this. This is kind of it's like a beige-ish, brownish orange, but I don't want to accentuate it too much, okay? But right away you can see, if we disable it, look at the rainbow. Pay attention right here. Before, after. And we're just subtly bringing it up. And you can see more of it on the scopes as well. Again, we can go even more extreme here. Okay, so it's a little more obvious. Okay, before, after. Subtle, but it's doing it. All right, and we can even widen the range so that it brings up a little bit more of the adjacent colors. Okay, cool. All right, I also want to do the same thing for the sky. So let's take our eyedropper. I'm going to click in the blue sky. It gives us our control points. Let's go ahead and constrain the movement. And again, just bring up that blue. And look at what happens there. Once I start to bring up that blue, now it's also bringing up the blue in that rainbow. That rainbow is becoming really defined. So just by identifying with the eyedropper, which we all know, oh, I want to affect that color range or that color range. It didn't touch any of the greens. It didn't touch any of the browns. It didn't touch any of the yellows, just the blues and the reds. Again, before, look at how flat that looks now, and after, and it just kind of pops out at you, right? Super easy, super cool. And now the finishing touch, which I loved and not everybody does, so this is a personal taste thing. Two things. One, I'm going to use a little bit of our standard RGB curves here. All right, so we're going to do kind of the S curve here. All right, playing around with some of the shadows and a bit of the highlights there. All right, and this really brings out some definition in that rainbow. So again, let's look at it before and after just the curve now. There's before the curve, after the curve, before, after. And we kind of, maybe I did a little too much there because I'm kind of killing a little bit of that brightness. All right, subtle like that. And then for the last thing, I'm going to go to the vignette. So the vignette module here, identical to the vignette that you have in Photoshop Camera Raw in Lightroom. Let's just add a little bit of a vignette on here. Okay, just to draw focus right into the center like that. And just like that, we've taken something that started out like this. There's our original. And took it to this, right? Softer, smoother. It almost looks fake now, except it's not fake. It's video, right? There's a car driving by. And of course, you can enable and disable this in real time to kind of see before and after. But you can see we just balanced out those colors, balanced out those tones and hues, and it just feels more, it feels right now, right? There's just something very, very about it. All right, let's see what we got in here. Jason, Mr. Blue Sky. Jorge, nice. Okay. Sweet. A Care Bears rainbow, Michelle. Absolutely. Theodore E. wanted to emphasize that watching your videos are being very helpful. I'm devouring them. Oh, thank you. Devour away. I love that. I love the intensity of the description too. Jorge Luis, Mountain View, Santa Monica, San Mateo. This is actually Arizona. Okay. Very cool. All right. So one example of, again, taking that color edge off and just making it look a little bit more pro, a little bit more cinematic with just a couple of changes in Lumetri, all right? And by the way, as I like to point out always, if you like the look of this, right, and you want to reuse this and you've got other footage from the same, shoot, same point in time, just come up to Lumetri Color. You can either save it as a preset, which will appear under your effects, under presets here, okay? Or if you want, you can also save it as a look or as a .cube file to be used elsewhere, all right? So you got a lot of options here. Super cool. Okay, let's go to the next example here. So this one, don't need to do too much to this. This was some footage that I shot in San Francisco. And for this particular clip, this is some 4K, again, shot on the iPhone. Sorry for the murraying, but again, it's just because we're squeezing this down into a very small view. By the way, just to kind of showcase to you, if I, instead of went into fit, I wanted to show this at 100%, take a look at the vantage point right here. That's 100%, okay? So again, it's very different when you're looking at 100% versus that fit to view look, okay? But again, now you're not seeing the murraying that we were just seeing a moment ago. All right, so for this particular shot, what I really wanted to do again was you know, sometimes maybe you don't want to mess about with manually trying to correct things. Maybe you like the overall look. Again, now we've got some kind of blown out highlights in here. This was actually shot within Rush, but I didn't do too many manipulations, obviously. So the highlights are a bit blown out. We've got some lost shadow detail, not too much, but you know, a little bit. It's okay. But there's some great focus, very good focus. I mean, you can really see there's an enormous amount of detail and depth. If you look out like to the ocean here, to the bay, I mean, you can just really see the boats and the detail on the boats. It's pretty amazing that the iPhone can really do this. And, you know, the Samsung does it really well too. But I wanted to just give this a bit more of a stylized look. So under Creative, now we were talking about adding kind of film stock LUTs or looks to soften, take the edge off. Oh, and I neglected to mention, of course, there's also faded film, which does that quite brilliantly as well. And you can see if we just kind of go really extreme, it just adds that sort of lower contrast film aesthetic. That really takes the edge off. You see a lot of films actually that look kind of like this. I love this particular look. There's something very, very sort of creamy smooth about this, very organic. If there's any harshness, by the way, now I don't say do this at 100%, but if you've got any harshness, I mean, just to give you an idea, here was 0 faded film. Here's what the original looked like, okay? And then if we bring this back up, I mean, it just really adds a totally different dimension to the look of your video here. All right. But we also have color presets that can really be used to stylize. So I wanted to give this a bit more of, this is kind of sunset. I really wanted to give this a bit more of a cooler, you know, midday look. You know, this wasn't exactly, this is probably pretty close to golden hour actually. So you'll see we've got all these different presets here. Again, this is where we can kind of skip through all of them. And the one that I'm looking for is called Blue Intense. All right, so we're going to keep going through some of these. We've got, you know, kind of classic bleached looks. All right, and again, you can just single click to apply these. This will give you kind of that. This is a different kind of film we're making here, but right? I mean, look at how it just automatically just totally stylizes this video, you know, just a totally different look. All right, Blue Cold, again, that one has a bit of that teal and orange thing. Blue Day for Night. So again, this is kind of like, all right, nighttime is coming, you know, super cool, automatically changes the look. But I want this one, Blue Intense. And this just, again, right away, just gives it a very high contrast, cinematic look that I really like. All right, go to 100% here, play this back, right? And it just totally changes the feel of the video. Now, you know, a lot of people say, well, isn't that, you know, it's like cheating, you're just using a preset. Well, you know, we're kind of in a preset world these days, right? If it weren't for Instagram what did I just say? If it weren't for Instagram if it weren't for Instagram making filters popular, you know, I guess people, I mean, there's always been apps that do that, like with a one click. But again, you've got control here. You can adjust the intensity. And you can see, look at the original. Look at how much magenta, again, golden hour was in there. If we go back to the default of 100, right, it really changes the whole feeling of this. And if we increase this even more, I mean, we can really crunch that up. Now it almost looks like a 70s cop film. You know, if you've ever seen, you know, look at Dirty Harry, 1971, shot in San Francisco. Kind of has this vibe. Bullet, 1968, kind of has this vibe. All right. And then if you take something, because it's super high contrast, and again, we've got, you know, our shadows are kind of on the edge of, you know, lost detail. We can just bring in a little bit of that faded film, right? So you still have that same aesthetic, but look down here especially. I don't know if this is coming through on the stream, but, you know, you can see there's like cars down here. Obviously, I'm zoomed in and you're not seeing the full detail here. Actually, why don't I do that so you can actually see it directly? Non-pixelated, all right? So look, there's all these cars and things down here, and you can really see the detail in the building. Let's turn off that faded film. You can still see it, but, you know, we're losing it. This kind of falls into shadow. So just a little bit of that faded film is going to bring back just a tad of that detail, and again, maintain that super, you know, classic kind of look. Also now look here, we've lifted the shadows without increasing a great amount of noise either, which is a huge benefit. So this just kind of gives it a different look, a different feel, and just, a super cool vibe if you're trying to tell kind of a very specific story with color, right? Don't forget that color, people have like an emotional attachment to color. This is why it's no different in images, right? I mean, you shoot something and then like watch Terry, watch it before and after, processing and retouching. The stuff really comes alive, right? And that's what color does. It takes the already beautiful content that you shot and just raises it up. And now you have total creative control over that look. Maybe you didn't get the blue sky you wanted. Maybe you didn't want golden hour, This allows you to temper those preconceived things that happened on the day of the shoot and really customize and make them your own. Michelle likes that vibe. Very nice. All right. Oh my God, Tim. The old Dean Martin song, That's Amore. Very, very nice. Saladin, I never thought of using faded film and LUTs together. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. And by the way, I don't know that everybody necessarily does that, but that's the idea, is that if you're using one of these speed looks, that's what the SL stands for, which, they tend to be a bit intense. And sometimes, depending upon, as I said, how you've shot the content, it can maybe make it even more digital looking. A little bit of that faded film, or a lot. It's whatever you want, right? Who's to judge? It's your shoot. It's your movie. Do it the way you want. All right. Super cool. All right. Hoping cinematic sound mixing is on this episode. Well, we're going to cover just a couple of effects, not mixing this time, although I just did one previously about some mixing and stuff. And of course, you can go to my YouTube channel or some of the other things we've done here on Adobe Live where I've talked about that. You can see lots more. Okay. All right. Moving on. Let's go to stabilization. Okay. Now, this is just kind of one of those fundamental things that, sometimes you want the handheld, shaky camera look. Other times, not so much. And, I've said this many times. I like to think of myself as I've been meditating for 26 years and have a, very intense fitness routine in the mornings. And I'm like super chill. It's funny because I saw a comment on YouTube just before coming on the show where someone was like, his energy is ridiculous. Yes, I can channel that energy, but my default nature, believe it or not, is actually very, very calm and chill. So you would think that being so calm and chill, I could take a device and shoot something, very steady, and it would just be steady. But as we all know, the human body is just, it's a marvel. It's also a very strange thing. And, when you shoot stuff with a smaller format device, like an iPhone or any kind of mobile device, or even just a small format camera, the smaller the device, the more it tends to accentuate shaking and body movements. Even when you think you're totally still, there's usually something. So here's some footage that I shot in Egypt. I've shown some of this content before. I don't know if I've shown this one in particular. You can see my buddy Terry right there. By the way, that's Terry White right here. How's it going, Terry? All right. So we shot this in Giza in Egypt many moons ago. And, pretty cool. I was trying to get the Great Pyramid in here, but it has that, that homegrown kind of, I was trying to go for kind of this, how do you get it all in there? I couldn't back up anymore. So I'm trying to be still. It's not bad, but it definitely has that, handheld kind of look. So let's go up to effects, and we're going to go into warp. With my clip selected or highlighted, I can simply double click on the warp stabilizer. And if I go into effects controls, oh, it didn't apply there. Sorry about that. Let's double click it. There we go. And go into effects controls. And what you will now see, it tells you it's analyzing in the background. And if we look over here, it is now stabilizing frame by frame that entire scene. Okay. And it tells us our percentage. We've got 174 frames here, so not a lot to do. Just like that, and stabilizing, and done. All right. So here is the stabilized version. What? Now it kind of looks like looks like we were on a track, right? Here, I'm gonna go into loop mode here so you can kind of appreciate it. It's just smooth, all right? Super smooth. What did it look like before? Was it even that bad? Let's turn off the stabilizer. It's not horrible. It's still pretty good, but it has that like that initial jiggle that you tend to get. Stabilized, right? Super smooth. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details and parameters of the warp stabilizer. You can play around with these. You've got a combination of things in terms of stabilization, both smoothing and no motion. We're going to talk about this in a second. You've got a couple of different methods: position, scale, rotation, perspective, and subspace warp, which is the default. Each of these will give you different types of results depending upon the kind of movement and the kinds of things that you have in the foreground and background that you're effectively trying to stabilize or minimize movement on. But this one is the really interesting one here, because you may have noticed when I applied the stabilizer, it scaled the video, right? It had to push it forward. And a lot of people ask, well, why does it do that? Why can't it not scale? Well, I'll show you. If you just turn on the method here, stabilize only, the default is stabilize, crop, and auto scale. This is now going to show you black bars along the edges. And what you'll see is it's showing you how I was skewing my movement, right? So you can very clearly see, look at those black bars along the edges here, right? It had to reframe all of that. So I was constantly kind of shaking to the right and tilting a bit up, right? So it had to account for all of that movement in that kind of lower right corner quadrant of the video. So when you go into stabilize, crop, and auto scale, that's so you don't see those black bars anymore. It just fills the whole frame with the video as you want it to. And it's worth pointing out that we actually do less cropping, less scaling than we used to. This was changed a couple of versions ago, but now it's even better. Okay. June Parlett Norsworthy, where is the warp stabilizer located in Lightroom? So no warp stabilization is for video. So you're not going to have warp stabilizer in Lightroom. Now, if you're talking about lens profile corrections, that's in one of the main modules in the develop module in Lightroom Classic, and you'll find it just in the it's towards the bottom of the controls. I think just above geometry in Lightroom CC. Harvinder Singh, how are you? Is time remapping help me achieve time lapses? Actually, Theodore, if we have time, I don't know if we will at the end, I will try and show a little bit of time remapping. But yes, you can do time lapses via time remapping or speed adjustments in Premiere. All right. Asha Yunus, how are you doing? Abrazak, hello. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's go to another version of this. So this is the Great Sphinx of Giza, right? And you can see I'm super zoomed in here. Now, by the way, this was shot 10 years ago. This is a Canon 7D. Whoops. Canon 7D. And I was shooting with a non-fixed aperture lens. I think it was the kit lens, actually, because we were warned before we went there, one, don't change lenses out in the desert unless you want to ruin them, right? Super windy. I've got the sound disabled because you can't believe how windy it is if you've never been there. But so I couldn't change any of my primes. And again, there's always a risk when you're shooting in a very windy, deserty place that you could, hurt the glass, right? Scratch the glass. So I used my cheap kit 18 to 135 lens. So you're going to see these little flickers as I pull out. That's because it's a non-fixed aperture. So as I'm zooming out, it's going from, f5.6 to f7 to f8 or to, whatever. It's adjusting dynamically, which causes those little kind of flicker anomalies. So you can see what I was trying to do here. Again, kind of a smooth movement. It's okay, right? It still looks pretty handheld. It is handheld, all right? But I wanted this to look even more cinematic, and specifically just that initial pull. I wanted that to feel just very steady and slow. So this is where we're really going to be able to affect this nicely. Now again, and just to kind of up level this, this is one where maybe I could get away with using that CineSpace. I mean, it's too much. Maybe we go like 50%, but this is going to add some very dramatic color. This is also where I would probably come in here to curves and just right away click into that blue sky and just start bringing some of those elements up. All right. Like this. Okay. Make it very intense. Lift a little bit of that shadow. All right. And honestly, I'm just not into the CineSpace one. It just never quite does it for me. Ooh, but some of these look pretty cool. Ooh, that one looks neat. Blue Cold. Yeah, that's it. All right, then we can increase some saturation on that. And a little bit of vibrance. Ooh, I like that. Okay. Sweet. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Let's go ahead and add our stabilizer. So we're going to come up again to Effects. We can just drag it on here this time. All right. This one's going to process. Got 353 frames. Asha Yunus. Yes, I did film that. So again, yeah, this was all this stuff is stuff that I shot, and this was done, a long time ago. Canon 7D. Kit lens. 18 to 135. Not a terrible lens. Not the greatest, but it's okay. Again, kind of adjust the intensity here. This is where I might also go into those curves and kind of pull out a bit more of that orange red, I don't want to lose the color that you actually feel on that statue. All right. Oh, and because I just made those changes, I got to reanalyze. Okay. How was my experience being in Egypt? Oh my gosh, it was one of the greatest of my life. Oh yeah. So not only were we very fortunate on this day, there were periods, if you look at some of the other footage, in fact, you can kind of see, even in this example here. So this was our guide. This is our other colleague, Greg. This is me and Terry. There was nobody around. I mean, look, you can even see into the... There were periods where there were no people. Now this area, I mean, you can see there's like 1-2 bodies over there. Flooded with people. And for almost all the solo shots of the pyramids that we took, suddenly everybody just disappeared. It was almost strange and eerie, but truly amazing. I mean, we had the most incredible time in Egypt back when we used to do a bunch of events and shows there when we used to tour. We went into Old Cairo, and I filmed again a little documentary there about a qanun player that I met. It was amazing, and people were wonderful, and it was just a really welcoming time. Okay, so let's take a look now. Oh, look at that. Okay, so again, minus my non-fixed aperture. Check this out. This is what's so cool about this. So before warp stabilizer, let's look at this pull, right? We're going to pull out, right? Shaky. Okay, watch it again. Handheld, shaky, again. It doesn't have that cinema vibe. Let's turn it back on. Let's wind back. Let's play. Oh, it's just, it's crazy, right? It literally looks like now I was just on a track. It's so perfectly straight. Now, this is where, if we go into no motion, I want to see what this does. So what that, oh yeah, okay, so that's not going to work on this particular clip. What that attempts to do is, it looks at the elements that it's stabilizing, and then it'll basically lock down the shot. This one isn't quite right because I'm pulling out and then I'm panning around, so that's not going to work for this. And it does exactly what I want. It just really makes it look like suddenly I'm on a tripod, right? And then I have this kind of lateral move to the side. By the way, look at how nice it is with that LUT. Here's the before. Here's the after. Okay? And it just smoothly flows now. Really lovely. But the color is something else, right? Before, It's kind of flat. Again, so much magenta. After, this is how I remember it looking. I mean, this is what it felt like. With this particular blue, look at the pyramid there in the distance. Look at the feet. The feet of the Sphinx. That's amazing. And even here, I mean, there's virtually no one. In fact, Terry has a photo. I believe it might even be on Adobe Stock. It's the Sphinx head. So it's this shot right here. It's actually this, almost exactly, but over to the right, because he has it where you can see these people just standing right there. Super cool. I mean, again, there's almost no one there in this moment. And then 2 seconds later, there were like 1,000 people. It was crazy, but it was so amazing. Yes, June Parlett. So this is Premiere Pro. So you'll find Warp Stabilizer in Premiere Pro. You will also find it in After Effects, okay? Jorge AG, I believe that there's a limit where Warp Stabilizer will do the job smoothly. Absolutely. And there's a couple of best practices that I can just kind of hip you to. If you've got, a lot of times when you shoot stuff, and here, I'm just going to go to the main camera for a second. If you shoot stuff and, you have that initial, like, finding your place, finding your position, trim off that real shaky bit before you apply the stabilizer. Because then what happens is it's analyzing that initial movement. It kind of throws the whole thing off. So a best practice, if you've got like super shaky, and then usually the end, right? Because if it's mobile, you're like flipping the camera to stop the video or whatever. You want to trim those pieces off. So you really want to find the best section that represents the bit that you want, that has, a consistent shake. That's really where this works well if the shake type, right, is consistent. If you have like a combination of lateral and longitudinal, I don't know which is which, it can kind of trip it up a bit. And it's not perfect, but this is where, in particular, if you're doing this in After Effects, you have more options to smooth out the end result. And some things, quite frankly, just really can't be stabilized very well by this particular effect. There are other third-party ones that do a pretty good job. But yeah, there are, you know, like anything, sometimes it'll amaze you with how beautiful of a job it does, and then other times it just doesn't quite do it. Okay. So, drone footage. Again, this is the kind of stuff which so many of us have drones now, and this is a bit of older piece of footage, but this was shot with GoPro, and kind of has that classic bent horizon, as you see right there. And you know, I've just never liked that look. You know, and this became such a thing, especially when extreme sports with the GoPros mounted on the helmet was such a thing. And I just kept seeing all this bent video, and it just really, I'm like, how can you, what is this? I guess it proves that the earth is round, but at the same time, like, wow, it's just so bent. It's hard to look at for me. So we have lens distortion correction as an effect in Premiere Pro. So let's go up to Effects. I'm simply going to type Lens, and you will see that we have a whole series of presets for lens distortion removal, based around two basic drone cameras, but you can apply these same presets and then modify them for any kind of wide-angle lens as well. So this happened to be shot, again, this is a couple years old, on, this was actually, I think, the Hero, this may have been the Hero 2. So let's do the Hero 2 medium preset. I'm gonna double-click on this. Oops, sorry. Drag this one on here. And just like that, like 1 second, horizon flattened, okay? So cool, so easy, right? Changes that perspective. Again, here's the original, spherical, corrected, right? Come over here, all right? Again, just to kind of show for perspective. Look at the line up at the top here. Here's the before, clearly, you know, half circle, enabled, corrected. Awesome. I mean, there's really nothing more you need to say about that, right? Even if you look at this perspective right here, here's the before. You can really see those bent, distorted edges. And after, all right? So that's lens distortion correction. So that's using it with a drone. Now, you know, the iPhone, of course, introduced that ultra-wide lens, I think in version 11, right? I'm still on a 10, I don't have that. I have a lot of ultra-wide lenses for my DSLR, which are amazing. And most of those don't actually have any distortion. In particular, the 14 to 24 Nikkor F28 is truly mind-blowing, and there's virtually no distortion at 14 millimeter, which is kind of shocking. But, you know, a lot of times you're on something that's even smaller, and in terms of like a 10.5 millimeter, and you get this kind of look. So this is Terry. This is from a gig we did, I don't even know how long ago, in his hotel room. I think this is a 10.5 mil, or it could be even a 16 millimeter prime. I'm not sure. You can also see we're getting some chromatic aberration here. But clearly very, you know, ultra wide and very, very distorted, right? So let's come over here to effects. And for this, I'm going to use that Hero 4 Super View, super wide preset, drag that onto here, and just like that, it does the correction. Now, again, you've got complete control. So if you wanted to further adjust, you know, how it's managing the curvature, right? You can see how it's adjusting these things, you know. So maybe, again, based on the preset, it's like too much or too little, right? This was at 21. I think we can go maybe even to 26 here, 25, all right? Then you've got vertical decentering, right? So you got like total control over this. Horizontal decentering, vertical prism, horizontal prism effects, all right? Fill, color, etc. But again, here it is after, right? This was shot with, you know, super wide angle. And it just looks great now. It looks, you wouldn't even know, right? Before, clearly very fisheye. Actually, that's what it is. This is a fisheye lens. Yeah. All right. I've never been a fan of the fisheye for that reason. After. Before, after. Okay? Now, if you like the fisheye look, keep it, right? But that's entirely up to you. So really cool, really easy. Yes, Terry White, of course. Nice. Via Lucia, first thing on GoPro lens, wide to linear. Yep. Nice. The fisheye. Okay. All right. And the last thing in our last 3 minutes here, want to talk about a couple of sound tricks that you can do, again, to just kind of up-level your video here. The first is removing unnecessary echo of ambient spaces, okay? So take a quick listen to this. This was shot in a bathroom here in my house, all right? All right, so for this example, this is also fairly echoey, fairly full of reverb, small, untreated, echoey room. Very similar to the experiences that many of you have when, you know, creating your own vlogs or live streams. Okay, so what we want to do here is we're going to come up to our audio track mixer, click on one of the flyouts for effects, which, by the way, if you don't have this little twirl down enabled here, this is going to open up your effects inserts as well as your effects sends, okay? Come up to effects send 1, come into noise reduction, restoration, and let's go into de-reverb, okay? Double click on de-reverb. This brings up the de-reverb effect. We're just going to use the default here with all frequencies for the processing curve. Again, if you want more details on this, you can follow some of my other Audio 101s on Jason Levine video on YouTube. And then what this is going to do is it's going to minimize that reflection, right? Bathrooms are echoey, they're reflective. A lot of the spaces where people record their vlogs in their living room and where people are doing conference calls and stuff now at home are echoey. This can minimize some of that echo. So let's just take a listen here. Very similar to the experiences that many of you have when, you know, creating your own vlogs or live streams. So we're going to use the de-reverb effect to take a bit of this echoey edge off. So there's the after. Let's go back to the before. So we're going to use the de-reverb effect to take a bit of this echoey edge off. And after. And just silence those decays. You can hear those even ringing too, which you can probably fix with a little bit of equalization. Okay? Super easy, super cool. All right? So deverb is just that. It attenuates or smooths out some of the reflections from echoey or ambient spaces, right? So that's de-reverb. Now, the other option here is what if you want to add more reverb to something? You want to make something really echoey. Well, we can do that with the reverb effect. So let's go into Reverb, Studio Reverb. Double click on this, and I'm going to go into a preset like The Great Hall, okay? We're going to go about 40% wet. Let's leave about 100% dry on this. And now I can use this decay slider to make this as big or as small as we want.
All right, thank you so much for joining me today, and I thought this would be a great example just to showcase to you how we can leverage a little bit of the reverb. There's a lot of it in here to minimize, to attenuate.
Okay, we can even add things like more reflections and a bigger room size.
To gate some of the echo and decay and effectively make it seem like I'm a little bit closer and a little less reverberant.
Okay, and if you want to add other types of effects like delays, right, have kind of repeated delays, we can use the analog delay for this. I always go into the analog mode, go into something like a 400 millisecond delay, and this is going to give you those subsequent repeats that sound, oh, I'm on the wrong effect here. That would make sense. Wrong track. Makes sense why I'm not hearing that. Let's go into analog delay. Here we go. All right, analog, 400 milliseconds, something like this.
So much for joining me today, and I thought this would be a great example just to showcase to you how we can leverage a little bit of the de-reverb.
All right. Well, my friends, that is all the time we have. So hopefully you enjoyed this session, give you a little clue on how to make things a bit more cinematic. We've got the Adobe XD Creative Challenge coming up next. So stick around for that. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
There's a lot of it in here to minimize, to attenuate, to gate some of the echo and decay